I never really thought about even telling you what I would like. Like that, I'm starting from the beginning. Like it didn't even dawn on me that I could have equal pleasure. It didn't even dawn on me I could have equal pleasure. So now going to how do you unwire the things that you kind of think in the first place about sex, and then stepping out of your comfort zone even more to now tell the person what you like, because that is one of the most vulnerable things. It's actually more vulnerable than just having sex.
Everybody, welcome to another episode of Relationship Theory. Today is going to be nice and spicy, talking about sex and the things that are specific to different people. So let's hear it.
Let's do it.
What's that question?
I have a few preferences in the bedroom that I believe are unique to me, and I don't know how to communicate them to my significant other. Do you have any recommendations of how to bring these up?
Yes. So depending on the person and what it is, so I'll be very blatant. So I think girls, if you're out there, you can just say it, because he's going to be like, tell me more.
Just saying girls say it definitely isn't something that will then go, okay, cool, guys want to hear it, so I'll say it. There's so much embarrassment. Like, there's no way you can just be like, girls say it because guys want to hear it.
The punchline is going to be, he's really excited to hear about it, so tell him more. Now, of course, there are potentially things that he's going to look at you sideways, or maybe you've got a guy that's particularly prudish, so of course, you have to play everything by that person. But I will say, as a stereotype, and they become stereotypes for a reason, on balance, the guy is probably way more open and excited to hear. Like, the only thing anything that's going to step on his insecurities, that's the only thing where you might want to be a little more thoughtful. But that is, I would say, from his side. Now, they may still be tense to bring it up because they're like, no, but this is going to be the one thing that he would never be into. But you're going to say something?
I am.
Right.
It's interesting. Immediately you went into, it must be the woman asking the question.
No, I didn't. That was the easy one to answer.
Oh.
In fact, I assume the guy wants to broach more aggressive topics.
Yeah. It is not easy for women. That's interesting that you thought that was easy.
It's not, but it isn't easy, in my estimation, for internal reasons.
Right.
Whereas for the guy, I think it's more difficult for external reasons, because guys are, I mean, look, natural selection has made things a certain way. And for a guy, pregnancy is exactly one relatively short exchange, and then that's it. Unless he wants to engage more beyond that, he doesn't have to. For a woman, it's 9 months. So that sets our brains up very differently. I forget who said this, but I thought it was a genius phrase. For women, they have a detective inside their mind. This is why women love fucking true crime, because your brain is wired to like, is this the right one? Are they going to invest properly? Are they trying to pull a fast one? You have to, because it's such a huge investment for you to have children, and to do it alone, obviously, is way more risky. But for a guy, it's like the strategy is to go as far and wide as you can, because there's no, other than to produce the sperm, there is literally no reason not to. So it's like you might as well. They've done all kinds of studies that back this stuff up, including if you have a man approach, an attractive man approach a woman and say, would you like to go on a date with me? Would you like to go back to my place? Or would you like to have sex? So they say one of those three things. And it's like, if they're really attractive, like 30% of women say yes to the date, 10% say yes to going back with them, and 0% say, I'll go back, I'll have sex with you. For guys, it's like 90% say yes to the date, 87% say yes to going back to your place, and like 100% say yes to sex. It literally is hilarious. Now, those obviously aren't the real numbers, but they're directionally accurate. It is, like opposite ends of the spectrum. And like you can make the girl less attractive and they're still likely to say yes to sex. It's nuts. To get a girl, like any appreciable percent of women to say yes to a direct proposition for sex, they have to be famous. So it's like, there just is a discrepancy in how we read sex. So for women, it's like I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be rejected. Like this is a whole sort of knot in my psyche. And then you've got cultural things about women aren't supposed to be as sexual. And so you get that whole tangle. For a guy, while they may have extreme anxiety to bring it up to a woman, I would say on balance, of course there are guys that are going to be prudish and they don't want to hear it, or you're going to trip their insecurities, whatever. But on balance, just like an unimaginable percentage of guys will go back and have sex with a woman based on a single sentence question of, will you have sex with me? And the answer is yes. They would love to hear.
All right, so let's take this. I love that. Let's take this in as if it was the guy asking the question and the girl asking the question. So we started with the girl, so we may as well just keep going down that path right now. Yeah, I remember like I was embarrassed. I mean, I want the lights off, and you're like, what are you talking about, lights off? I want floodlights. And I'm like,
stadium lighting.
Yeah, I'm like, are you crazy? Like, you know, the joke where it's like, you know, like back up into the car so they can't see like the full, like the all the things that you're insecure about, or like when you get out of bed in the morning, like you shimmy backwards so they can't see like your drooping butt. All of those things are things that we get hung up on. And so for me, I definitely got hung up on like exactly what you said. I don't want to be judged. I'm insecure anyway, because until I met you, there was no like, oh, hey, let's just talk about sex. Let's talk about what you like. Like I never had that relationship with my ex-boyfriend.
Can I tell you something they said in sex ed classes? The best thing they ever said. If you can't talk about sex, you're not ready to have sex.
And I mean,
it's genius.
Yes. And I've forgotten what I was saying.
You were very insecure about talking about sex.
Oh, thank you. So, you know, I had my past experience wasn't ever discussed. It was like I was always embarrassed. I didn't actually even know what I liked because he was a bit clunky and I was clunky. And so I never gave myself the space to experiment. And so when I met you, I was just that awkward, uncomfortable, sure, you know, what do you like type thing. And I never really thought about even telling you what I would like. Like that, I'm starting from the beginning. Like it didn't even dawn on me that I could have equal pleasure. It didn't even dawn on me I could have equal pleasure. So now going to how do you unwire the things that you kind of think in the first place about sex, and then stepping out of your comfort zone even more to now tell the person what you like, because that is one of the most vulnerable things. It's actually more vulnerable than just having sex.
Wow. You're right, but that's really fascinating.
So it's interesting because it does tie into trust. It ties into, can I tell this person this thing? And am I safe with them to tell them? Because if I do feel like I'm unique, let's say I've seen a bunch of porn and I'm like, I've never seen anyone like this and I'm the only one. It's like you do feel like, are other people going to judge me? Are they going, you know?
You haven't seen enough porn. I can't fathom that somebody's into something that there's like a Reddit thing for there's porn for everything. And you've heard about furries. There's Shizer films, for the love of God. So, but yes, I get your point.
So I think it really comes to trust. And to me, it would be, how much can I trust you as my partner with things about myself? And so I actually wouldn't start with sex. I would start with other little things about me, see how they respond, see if they're just like, oh, bless you, don't worry about that. Right. Or if they're, oh, God, I can't believe that, right? Like, just see how they do with other things. And you're right, it's like, really, should you be having sex with them if you can't even trust them in the first place? That's a whole other subject. But I would do that first and then see. And then here's what I would do, because your response may be, just freaking tell him. I wouldn't do that. I would, like, during sex, try something close to maybe what I liked. Wow. And then see how you respond.
That is a recipe for clumsiness.
Yes, but there is something about just putting yourself out there and telling the person. And so it becomes like the difference between jumping in the deep end before testing the water, the temperature, and like dipping your toe in, so you can be a little cautious, like, what's the temperature now? And so sometimes dipping your toe in is actually more safe. It feels safer. It feels more comfortable. You can do it in steps and stages.
Oh, I think that's very smart. In fact, I think ultimately that's the advice that you want to. And I was thinking like, God, would a therapist think that this answer is terrible? Maybe, but yes, that would be my advice, is you start incrementally. Like if you're too embarrassed, like But I would say to do it in discussion versus trying some, I mean, it depends entirely what it is. In sex, you want to be communicative, and if you're trying to hint or just get there by proxy, I don't know, it could end awkwardly. I don't think it's going to be like a nightmare, but it could be a little bit awkward versus saying, hey, I'd really like to try this. I think it'd be a lot of fun. And then you try it. And at least then you're on the same page versus trying to like read. It's like, I once bought you teeth whitening strips when you wanted a watch, and that was how well I picked up on your hints. So yes, I do worry about hints.
All right, so how would you, and in fact, let's not even do this in the abstract. I can't really think about us having these like they didn't feel like heart palpitating conversations.
One way that we did this, so, I mean, we would, when we went like...
You took a deep breath like, all right, I'm just about to reveal something.
I mean, so one thing that has worked well for us, and we don't do it very often, but it's really been, it's always peak emotional experiences for us. When we have a few drinks and we would take lists of questions. So both you and I are euphoric, happy drinkers. So when we drink, we're in an amazing mood, and it's like, yeah, like let's connect.
And it's special because we don't do it too often.
Exactly. And so in those moments, I used to write down like 30 or 40 questions. And of course, some of the most fun ones would have to do with sex, and you wait until later into the conversation when you're both really in a zone. And probably for the first decade of our relationship, it was like, oh my God, I've never asked her this. Now it's like, I know the answer to like all of the crazy questions, but that was a lot of fun. But that was knowing how we are in those moments. It was knowing that we both love having questions to answer. It was knowing that we have the trust already. So there's a lot going into it, but that was how I think we avoided some of the like, oh, this is a little bit awkward, was we were creating a vibe, and it was a sexy vibe, and so we were in our bubble, as we say.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was like, yeah, my friend Sex with Emily, who has a sex podcast, she literally would say, yeah, never talk about sex in the bedroom. She's like, you never talk about sex in the bedroom. That place is to have the feelings, and any conversations that you have should be had not while you're in the middle of things.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, so did we go on both there from female
Well, I guess, so yeah, I mean, you gave your thing on the questions, which is actually very true, on having questions like, what is something in bed that, you'd like to try that you haven't been sure I would be open to?
Oh, you gotta ask way crazier questions than that. Once you have the trust and stuff, it's like, what's the thing that you've always wanted to try, but you've been afraid to tell me?
Right.
That's the kind of question you ask.
Right, but you
gotta.
gotta.
It's like, all right, I want the juicy stuff.
But you gotta have the questions, and that has to be like after drink, like 2.
Oh, yeah. Like, I put them in order, homie. It's like, you never start with the juicy ones. You start with the more tame ones.
And to be honest, look, at least this is how I think of it. I want you to be happy. So to be honest, unless it crosses a moral line for me, sure. Like, and if you judged me, let's flip it for a second, because if you then judged me for something that was just like, it may be weird, but I really like it, and you're just like, oh God, like that would really be important for me to know about you as my partner.
Wow.
Yeah, because if you're just like, if you're dismissive of something.
Wow, that's very different.
But that's what I mean.
But there could be things that I don't want to do. Would you be weirded out by that?
No, not if you were like, babe, I don't really like. I mean, look, there's many things I've said that I wouldn't do.
Yeah.
And I've just said, like, I'm not. But
I'm not
I don't.
Interested. You never made me feel bad about asking.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
And that's always been a rule. That if you don't make me feel bad about asking, I won't make you feel bad about saying no. And that's like, then we're good. It's when you make the other person feel bad for asking, or you make the person feel bad for saying no, that's when it gets into a problem. The fact that not everybody's going to line up on everything, like that, to me, is A-okay. Assuming you have a thriving and fruitful sex life, it's like, all right, it's not a big deal to me anyway. But if you made me feel bad for even asking, or judged for even asking, that would suck. That would shut me down. So it's like, I would go way out of my way if it was something that I was like, wow, I'm so glad you felt comfortable. And literally, this is what I'd say. I am so glad you felt comfortable asking me that. I think that's rad. I'm super stoked. And maybe we can get to something close or whatever, but that I'm just not that into that. But again, I'm really glad that you shared that with me. Like, that to me is a reasonable exchange, because the other person should never, ever, 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 ever feel obligated just because you ask to make them feel good. But at the same time, you should feel the honor of somebody trusting you with that.
And when I think about, I want our relationship to last for the rest of our lives. So in saying that, do I ever want you to feel like there's something you can't say to me? Do I ever want there to be something that you want that makes you happy? And maybe like, I'm like, of course, that sounds great. And now you're not asking because you're worried about how I'm going to respond. Like, I just think about, what is that type of relationship you want with a person long term? And that's why it's like, if you were to either dismiss me or be rude or make me feel bad about even asking, that really would be a huge part of, are you the right person to spend the rest of my life with? Because now I don't feel comfortable sharing with you. And going back to what relationship, at least me and you committed to, it was to make sure that we always share everything, no matter how hard it is to say, that we say the thing. So that's the relationship I want. And so if the other person was making me feel like I couldn't because I get dismissed, or because it's getting ignored, or even just like like some people demean it, right, and dismiss it, and I just wouldn't settle in a relationship like that, because that's not the relationship I would want long term.
Preach. There it is, boys and girls. Sometimes you have to wade in slowly, dip your toe in, check the water, but being able to have those kind of conversations is hugely important. And speaking of things that are hugely important, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, my friends, build a beautiful relationship. Take care. Peace.